imagine two warring factions, like sworn, absolute blood enemies, who basically define their entire existence by how much they hate each other.
Right, the kind of deep-seated rivalry you constantly see on the news.
Exactly. You hear their fiery public rhetoric, you watch the devastating aftermath of their clashes. But then imagine walking into a dense, remote forest in the dead of night and finding those exact same two factions quietly sharing a campfire.
Wow.
Yeah, just sitting there plotting exactly how to keep their supposed war going just a little bit longer.
I mean, that completely shatters the fundamental logic we usually try to apply to warfare.
It really does.
Because we naturally want to believe that conflict, however tragic or brutal it is fought over genuine ideology or territory or historical grievances.
Right, something tangible.
Yeah. Discovering that a bloody ethnic conflict might actually be like a highly coordinated cooperative performance, and that is a profound and deeply unsettling paradigm shift.
And that paradigm shift is exactly what we are examining today on the deep dive. We are unpacking a highly provocative, intensely politically charged post that recently surfaced on Telegram.
Yeah, it's wild.
It is. It's by an author who uses the handle Side Social, and it focuses squarely on the ongoing, deeply complex conflict in Ethiopia.
And just to give you, the listener, the necessary context before we really get into this material deals with severe, ongoing political and ethnic violence.
Very severe.
Right. It involves left-wing ideologies, right-wing factions, intense ethno-nationalism, and just immense human suffering on the ground.
Which is why we need to be really clear about our role today.
Absolutely. Because we are looking at real pain and an active conflict, we are maintaining strict impartiality.
We're not taking sides.
No, not at all. We are not endorsing the claims made in this post, nor are we attempting to debunk them. Our goal today is strictly to analyze the architecture of the author's argument. It's fascinating, but it is just an analysis.
Right. We are treating this text as a window into a specific, highly controversial viewpoint. And the author clearly knows how explosive this premise is, right?
Oh, they definitely do.
The text literally starts with a disclaimer, warning the reader directly. It says, this information might seem like fake propaganda to you, but it's absolutely not.
Yeah, and when an author opens by assuring you they aren't making the story up, they know they are demanding a massive leap of faith from you.
A huge leap.
Right. And the leap they are asking for here involves two very specific armed groups in Ethiopia.
Right, let's name them.
So first you have OLF Sheen, which claims to fight for the Oromo people. And then you have Fano, which is a militia claiming to represent the Amhara people.
Okay, let's establish the baseline here, because the author's central premise only has an impact if you actually understand the public dynamic between these two groups.
Right.
On paper, their entire reason for existing is to protect their respective ethnic bases from each other.
Yes.
I mean, the rhetoric is visceral, and the historical context is incredibly fraught.
Their public identities are fundamentally built on absolute opposition. So Fano's stated objective centers on defending the Amhara population against aggression.
Okay.
And explicitly, they position the armed representation of the Oromo people as a primary existential threat.
Right. And it goes both ways.
Exactly. Conversely, OLF Sheen's ideology is rooted in Oromo nationalism. So they frame the Amhara influence and militias as their historical and present enemy.
So it's not just a recent political disagreement.
No, not at all. You have decades of complex historical grievances, land disputes, and political narratives feeding into a very real animosity.
So the public narrative is crystal clear. Fano and OLF Sheen are on opposite sides of a bloody ethnic and political divide.
Right.
But Side Social claims the reality on the ground, specifically when you get out of the capital and head to the remote borders of the Amhara and Oromiya regions, tells a completely different story.
You're a totally different reality.
Yeah. The text points directly to eastern Wolega, zeroing in on two specific woredas, or, districts, called Kirimu and Gita.
And that geographic specificity is crucial to the author's argument.
Why is that?
Because they aren't just talking about, a vague national trend or some abstract philosophical concept.
They're pointing to a map.
Exactly. They're pointing to a map and saying, look, right here. The claim is that in Kirimu and Jita, Fano and OLF Sheen are working in total, active coordination.
It's just so hard to believe.
I know. They are allegedly fighting the Ethiopian National Defense Forces together.
At this point, you really have to wonder how a warlord actually pulls off the logistics of this.
It would be incredibly difficult.
Right. If you've spent years telling your recruits that the other side is pure evil and your survival depends on wiping them out, How do you explain setting up a joint camp?
Yeah, how do you keep them from killing each other?
I mean, the author alleges they moved together and camped together without ever firing a single shot at one another.
It demands a highly sophisticated level of command and control. You would need absolute iron-fisted discipline among the lower ranks just to prevent spontaneous violence.
Right, to stop a mutiny.
Exactly. To prevent a mutiny, commanders likely have to use heavy tactical deception.
Like what would they even say?
Well, they might tell their foot soldiers, we're just using them for safe passage. Or, this is a temporary tactical truce so we can survive the government offensive.
Ah, okay. That makes sense.
Right. The leadership has to constantly compartmentalize the propaganda they feed the public from the operational reality they enforce on the battlefield.
And the author doesn't just treat this as some localized anomaly either, like some random squad making a deal.
No, they go way further.
They escalate the claim by naming the specific leadership figures at the very top of the chain. The text states that Fano, led by Zemeni Kassi, maintains high coordination with OLF Sheen, led by Jal Maro.
And by naming Zemeni Kassi and Jal Maro, the text is arguing this isn't just a few exhausted rogue foot soldiers agreeing to a truce so they can survive a harsh night in the jungle.
Right, this is institutional.
Yes. It frames this as a deliberate top-down strategy engineered by the highest command levels of both factions.
Which implies that the ethnic hatred is hell.
Purely instrumental.
Wow.
Yeah. The leadership uses the animosity to recruit and motivate the base, but they completely discard it when making tactical, operational decisions.
You know, it makes me think of an analogy. It's almost like two rival sports teams, right?
Okay, yeah.
Where the fan bases absolutely despise each other. They'll get into fights in the parking lot.
Right, total tribalism.
Exactly. But behind closed doors, the coaches are secretly sharing a playbook to ensure every single game goes into overtime.
Oh, just to sell more tickets and concessions?
Yes. The fans think the rivalry is life or death, but the management just sees a shared business interest.
That is a perfect analogy. Or, it's a lot like two organized crime syndicates dividing up a city.
Oh, like a cartel.
Exactly. They might pretend to have a violent turf war to keep the local police confused and ensure the neighborhood is terrified enough to keep paying protection money.
Right.
But behind closed doors, the bosses from both families are sitting at the same table, casually splitting the profits. The street-level soldiers might actually believe the rivalry is real, but the leadership applies a cold market logic to it all.
And if they aren't actually fighting for ideology, it has to be about resources. I mean, maintaining a standing army of rebels in remote regions is incredibly expensive.
Oh, incredibly.
You need a constant pipeline of food, weapons, ammunition, medicine, and recruits.
Yeah.
So I'm assuming this alleged alliance is essentially a massive extortion racket masquerading as a revolution.
The text supports that assumption explicitly. Side Social asserts that these groups do not care about the populations they claim to represent.
At all.
Not at all. The author argues their actions are designed solely to, and this is the specific visceral word used in the text, fatten and sustain themselves.
Fatten themselves. Wow. That implies a deeply parasitic relationship.
That's exactly what it is.
They are feeding off the host body, which in this case is the civilian population and the instability of the state itself.
It completely reframes the entire purpose of the violence. Armed groups in these environments operate in what political scientists actually call an economy of violence.
An economy of violence. Okay, break that down for me.
Well, think about it. In a stable, peaceful society, a militia leader has no status, they have no authority, and they have no income stream.
Right, because the police are doing their job.
Exactly. There are no checkpoints to tax, no illicit trade routes to control, and no terrified populations to extort for, quote-unquote, protection fees.
So peace is actually bad for business.
It's terrible for business. Their livelihood, their power, and their relevance are entirely dependent on the continuation of instability.
So fighting the central government together while simultaneously pretending to fight each other becomes the most efficient, low-risk way to secure those resources.
Yes.
The author actually states it bluntly. For them, killing is politics. It is business.
Viewing it strictly as a business model explains the baffling tactical decisions that otherwise make absolutely no sense.
Like what?
Well, if you genuinely want to defeat your enemy and establish lasting peace, you fight a definitive war of attrition to destroy them.
Right. You go all in.
But if your goal is to maintain your own power and wealth, you fight a war of sustainability.
You pace yourself.
Exactly. You engage just enough to justify your existence, keep the central government at bay, and justify your demands for resources from the locals, but you never fight hard enough to actually resolve the conflict.
Because resolution means you go out of business.
Precisely.
Okay, but maintaining a shadow business alliance while running a very public war requires constant manipulation of the public. I mean, how do they justify the ongoing violence to their supporters? How do they keep the ruse going?
And that question leads us directly to the darkest, most disturbing claim in the entire text.
Okay.
It details the actual mechanics of how this alleged alliance operates to maintain the illusion of war. The author claims these groups orchestrate outrage through calculated, deeply cynical conspiracies.
Wait, what does that actually mean on the ground?
According to Side Social, when the leadership needs to escalate tension, say local donations are dropping or recruitment is slowing down or the public is starting to organize and demand peace negotiations, they don't just wait for a clash to happen naturally.
They force it.
They allegedly plan and execute the killings of innocent people.
Oh my God.
And crucially, the text explicitly claims they orchestrate the killing of both Oromos and Amharas.
Wait, they orchestrate killings against their own people.
Yes.
It's the ultimate false flag operation. They essentially manufacture a massacre to ensure the hatred between the two ethnic groups remains at a rolling boil.
Yes.
They kill the very civilians they swear to protect just to throw fresh gasoline on the fire.
It is a brutal mechanism of psychological control. When a community experiences a sudden, horrific act of violence, the natural human response is terror, profound grief, and a desperate need for security.
You're not thinking about diplomacy at that point.
No, not at all. The nuances of political negotiation or grassroots peace building just vanish instantly. People retreat into their tribal identities, and they look for a strong man to defend them.
And the militias are right there waiting.
Exactly. By secretly orchestrating these attacks, the militias actively create the very threat they claim to be defending against.
The author points out a specific reaction to these massacres that just highlights the sheer, terrifying cynicism of the whole strategy.
Yeah, the celebrations.
Right. The text describes how, when innocent people die in these ethnic-based killings, the armed groups meet the news with ululations, which are, expressions of celebration and joy.
And they celebrate because a massacre is a highly profitable event in their business model.
It's so dark.
It provides them with a brand new, emotionally charged agenda. It becomes a bloody fundraising card.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, the leadership can stand up in front of their traumatized communities, point to the bloodshed they secretly helped facilitate, and say, look at what those monsters did to us.
Give us your money, give us your food.
Give us your sons to fight, because we are the only shield you have left.
They position themselves as the righteous shield while secretly wielding the sword. It weaponizes the community's trauma against itself.
Perfectly said.
And if we follow the logic of this cartel-style alliance, it really explains why genuine peace feels so impossible to achieve under the current dynamics. Peace isn't just a difficult diplomatic puzzle. Peace is the literal, existential enemy of the people armed to enforce it.
The text drives heavily toward that exact conclusion. The ultimate goal, according to the author, is to keep the Oromo and Amhara peoples locked in a state of perpetual fear and hatred.
They need it.
They need the civilian population constantly seeking retribution and constantly terrified of their neighbors.
Because if those two communities ever manage to look past the manufactured outrage...
Yeah, if they ever communicated directly.
Right. If they realized they were both being bled dry by the same coordinated racket, the game would be over.
The existence of these extremist groups would vanish overnight. As the author rhetorically asks in the post, by whom will they agitate?
Right.
If the people simply refuse to hate each other, the warlords lose their army, their funding, and their power.
The conflict itself is the lifeblood of the organization.
Exactly. The militias function like a parasite that requires the host body to remain sick and feverish.
Because if the host, the nation or the communities, if they recover their health and stability, the parasite starves.
So the parasite must actively work to suppress any immune response, which, in this context, is the public's desire for reconciliation.
Well, the author is clearly fully aware of how explosive and, frankly, hard to swallow these accusations are. They actually anticipate immediate, aggressive denial from the groups involved.
Yeah, they call it out directly.
Right. The text explicitly says, now you will see both extremist groups deny this.
And the author argues that this denial won't simply be about refuting the facts for the sake of public relations. It will be about preventing curiosity. The leadership desperately needs to stop the general public from pausing, even for a moment, to ask, could this be true? Should we look closer?
Because the moment you start looking...
Exactly. The moment the civilian population begins to seriously investigate the logistical realities on the ground, the entire illusion starts to crumble.
And Side Social throws down a massive gauntlet to invite that very investigation. They don't just hide behind anonymous internet theorizing.
No, they are very direct.
The author boldly claims that any local living in the mentioned areas, in Kiramu and Gita in eastern Volga, can verify this reality with their own eyes.
They are daring the public to bypass the official propaganda channels of the militias and the state.
Just go to the front lines.
Go to the front lines and ask the locals who is really fighting whom.
And relying on the lived experience of the locals is such a powerful rhetorical device.
It really is.
It strips away all the ideological rhetoric and demands a focus on the tangible, physical reality of the conflict. Like, are the opposing camps actually shooting at each other? Are they moving together?
And the author is totally confident that the physical evidence of their collusion is hiding in plain sight. It's verifiable by anyone brave enough to ask the farmers and villagers caught in the crossfire.
It leads to an incredibly grim summary of the current state of affairs. The text describes the situation as a toxic mixture of ignorance and murderous tactics from both sides, which is turning the country into a literal bloodbath.
It is a profound lament for a nation caught in the grip of actors who actively profit from its destruction.
Yeah.
When the primary stakeholders in a conflict view bloodshed as a reliable revenue stream, the incentives for resolution are completely inverted.
The suffering isn't a tragic byproduct of the war.
No, the suffering is the product itself.
And before signing off, the author fires a warning shot in another direction entirely. They promise that in a future post, they will expose the sloppiness and gaps of the regime. So they're pointing the finger squarely at the national government, too.
Which implies a much broader systemic failure. I mean, if two supposedly rival militias can collude, coordinate logistics, and orchestrate massacres right under the nose of the state apparatus, it suggests a profound vacuum of security and governance. The author seems to be arguing that the state's inefficiencies, or perhaps even willful blindness, are creating the very environment that allows this cartel-like behavior to thrive in the first place.
Wow. Okay, as we wrap up our analysis of this text, let's zoom out for a second. We've spent this time examining a highly specific set of claims regarding OLF, Sheen, and Fano in Ethiopia.
Right.
But if we entertain the author's underlying premise that extreme polarization and ethnic conflict can be intentionally engineered into a lucrative, highly coordinated business model by alleged enemies, it demands a fundamental shift in how we process information globally.
It really forces you to cultivate a deep, almost uncomfortable level of skepticism when observing any protracted conflict.
Absolutely.
Because the stated public motivations of armed groups, political factions, or ideological movements might be entirely disconnected from their actual operational goals.
Think about the deeply polarized conflicts dominating global headlines today. When you see two opposing sides screaming at each other, insisting the other is an absolute existential threat to their survival.
It's so natural to take that animosity at face value.
It is. But if we apply Side Social's lens, we really have to ask, who truly benefits from the endless gridlock?
Good question.
Is it possible that in some cases the loudest, most bitter enemies on the public stage are actually quietly functioning as the closest of business partners behind the curtain?
It's a chilling thought.
It makes you wonder who is actually drafting the playbook and who is just paying the terrible price of admission to watch the destruction. Something to keep in mind the next time the lines of conflict seem a little too perfectly drawn. Until next time.